Sexual assault, abusive behaviour, the exploitation of women by men. These are vital issues for our society to address. We need a revolution. But instead of advancing that cause, Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee undermined it last week with pompous grandstanding and cheap moralising despite their own giant character flaws. More Democrat hypocrisy on Brett Kavanaugh is this week's Swamp Watch. Let's start with Senator Cory Booker.
There are dark elements that allow unconscionable levels of, unacceptable levels of sexual assault and harassment. You are opening up to open air hurt and pain that goes on across this country. Is you are speaking truth that this country needs to understand.
I agree, and I can think of one person in particular who needs to understand, Cory Booker himself. In college, he wrote a thoughtful article examining his own past sexual misdeeds, including groping a woman without consent while she was drunk. To his credit, back then, Booker used the incidents to highlight his own evolution on these issues. But in 2013, while mayor of Newark, Booker was caught exchanging salacious messages with a stripper. Lindsay Lee was reportedly working at Casa Diablo, which touted itself, wait for it, as the world's first vegan strip club. She told Cory Booker that the West Coast and she loved him and that, quote, "If you're POTUS, I call dibs on First Lady." Booker replied, "The East Coast loves you, and by the East Coast, I mean me." She responded, "Well, now I'm blushing. I bet you were, Lindsay." In Thursday's hearing, Cory Booker railed against a toxic culture and pernicious patriarchy. Although flirting with a stripper, of course, is fine. See how that goes down at your next Me Too meeting, Senator. But that's not even the end of it. Over the years, Cory Booker has been a frequent visitor to my part of the world, Silicon Valley, to ingratiate himself with the tech elite and raise money. He's created quite the impression. From every single person, you hear the exact same thing. Wow, what is going on with Cory Booker? He's a real mess. And that's from his donors. Look, I take a pretty libertarian attitude on all this. Winston Churchill was a massively heavy drinker and one of the greatest leaders in history. So, Senator Booker, I couldn't care less if your personal life is a mess, but I'm not the one moralising on that committee. Here's another massive hypocrite, ranking Judiciary Committee member Dianne Feinstein. Check this out.
Sexual violence is a serious problem and one that largely goes unseen. While young women are standing up and saying no more, our institutions have not progressed in how they treat women who come forward.
That soapbox starts to look pretty flimsy when you consider how close Feinstein was to notorious womanizer Ted Kennedy. Here's what she said when he died. "He was a colleague, an inspiration and a friend. I have seen up close and personal his dedication to issues of civil rights, human rights and basic fairness to all. Except the woman he exploited," writes Senator Feinstein. Ted Kennedy's sexual incontinence included a 1990 report of being caught having sex in public on the floor of a Washington, D.C. restaurant with a lobbyist. How perfectly swampy. At least she lived to tell the tale, unlike poor Mary Jo Kopechne, who Kennedy left to drown at Chappaquiddick. How can Dianne Feinstein be taken seriously on sexual violence when she called Ted Kennedy an inspiration? But there are plenty more Democrat hypocrites on her committee. Let's not forget Senator Patrick Leahy. He had this question on Thursday.
In your yearbook, you talked about drinking and sexual exploits, did you not?
And did you not, Senator Leahy, deliver a speech on the Senate floor while drunk yourself? And then there's saintly Kamala Harris, crusader for justice and righteousness. She had this question for Kavanaugh.
Do you agree that it is possible for men to both be friends with some women and treat other women badly?
Well, Senator Harris would know all about treating women and men badly. She's becoming notorious for abusive behavior towards her staff. Reports of the Kamala Harris's diva-like tantrums include an insistence on multiple meal options, only staying at top hotels like the Ritz-Carlton and the Waldorf Astoria, and refusing to eat food with anything except metal silverware. She once forced a staffer to take a set from a donor's house. But that's not the worst of it. Harris has been described as prone to hostile outbursts. For example, she was witnessed aggressively berating an aide inside a Washington elevator. Multiple Democrat staffers have told me how badly she treats people, an open secret in Democratic Party circles. No one says anything, though, because they're frightened of reprisals from her powerful political machine. Senator Harris, before you lecture anyone else about their temperament, and quite honestly, before you run for president yourself, you might want to work on your own abusive behavior. Look, of course we need to fight for gender equality and women's rights, but it's hard to imagine a worse bunch of people to do it than these Democrat hacks and hypocrites on the Senate Judiciary Committee.